Welcome back to all of my incredible students and subscribers. So good to see you guys again. My name is Connor, and this is English is Easy. Today, we have a really fun way to learn English, to practice our English, and that is by learning English with a short story. Here's the plan. First, we're going to quickly read the story together. Yeah, just a brief, fast look at the story the first time. Then we will have a vocabulary breakdown, taking a closer look at some of the more challenging, difficult, or complex language used in the story, just to make sure we understand everything crystal clear. Then we will go back to the story with a deep dive, going sentence by sentence, line by line through the story again to squeeze every last drop of educational juice that we can out of the story. Finally, in part 4 of today's video, we will have a discussion question to practice our English speaking skills. Now, if all of that sounds good to you and you are ready to get going, to start studying, just a quick favor to ask of you guys, please click like on this video. It supports me so much as your YouTube English teacher. And also, make sure you watch all the way till the end. This video is a deep work lesson, so you will get the most out of it if you watch it all the way through. All right, let's get started. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Revenant, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, a very famous actor. This movie came out years ago, but it's based on a true story. Yeah, the story of Hugh Glass, and it's a terrifying story, a really gripping story, a story that you can't stop reading, you can't stop listening to. So that's the story we are going to be taking a look at today. Once again, we will begin with a quick read. Sit back, relax, and listen. I will read the story to you quickly the first time. Here we go. A grisly nightmare. Have you ever wondered what it takes to survive in the wild when everything is against you? This is the true story of Hugh Glass, a man who refused to quit even when the world seemed determined to take him down. Hugh Glass was a frontiersman, one of those tough guys who explored the wilderness in the early 1800s. He and a group of fur trappers were deep in what's now South Dakota when disaster struck. While out hunting, Hugh was brutally attacked by a grizzly bear. The bear didn't just maul him, it left him with terrible injuries. Most people would have given up, but not Hugh. The real kicker was that his team didn't think he'd survive. They decided to leave him behind, taking his weapons and supplies. But Hugh wasn't about to let that be the end. With sheer willpower, he started dragging himself back to civilization, even though he was totally exposed to the elements and predators. Hugh had one goal: to settle the score with the men who left him. That drive fueled his determination. He crawled through miles of wilderness, facing freezing temperatures, starvation, and wild animals, but nothing could stop him. After weeks of agony, Hugh made it back. But instead of revenge, he chose to let go of his anger and spared the men's lives. Hugh's story is a testament to the power of determination and surviving against all odds. Okay, awesome job, guys. We are moving on from the quick read of the story on to the vocabulary breakdown. Yeah, now we're going to dissect or closely examine some of the more challenging language and phrases that we saw in that story, we're going to begin with the real kicker. This is a phrase in English, and it might be a little tricky to understand. Here's a simple definition: the most surprising or important part of a situation. In other words, the part that makes you go, wow, or what? Here's an example sentence from what we just read. The real kicker was that his team didn't think he'd survive and left him behind. Yeah, this is the real kicker. This is the part of the story that makes you go, wow. This is the part of the story that makes you go, what? No way. Maybe that's another way to think about it. The part of the story that makes you go, no way. And you have a face like this because you are shocked. You can't believe it. Now, here's another sentence unrelated to the story. So, in other words, this orange sentence has nothing to do with our story. We thought everything was fine, but the real kicker was that the power went out right before the presentation. They're going to give this presentation. They mistakenly thought, right, that everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Here's the kicker. Here's the real kicker. The power went out right before they gave the presentation, okay? That's the part of the story that makes you say, wow. That's the part that makes you say, what? That's the part that makes you say, no way. Moving right along, here's something else we saw in the story. Settle the score. Another interesting English phrase. What does it mean? To get revenge or make things even. In other words, here are some synonyms, some other ways to say that. To get even, to get payback, right? If somebody wrongs you, if somebody hurts you, if somebody harms you or takes advantage of you or gets the best of you, you might want to settle the score. You might want to get even. You might want some revenge or to get payback or to make things even, okay? Now, here are some antonyms. Maybe somebody hurts you. Somebody wrongs you. We could also say somebody does wrong by you. Maybe you don't want revenge. Maybe you don't want to get back at them. Maybe you choose to forgive them. You say, okay, I'm going to let this go. In our story, we saw that Hugh wanted to settle the score with the men who abandoned him. Yeah, we've got this guy, Hugh. He is abandoned by his teammates, basically, by the people who he was working with, okay? And these guys, after Hugh gets attacked by a grizzly bear, these guys decide to abandon him. Hugh is hurt so badly. He is wounded so badly that they think the situation is hopeless. They think that, okay, if we have to take care of him, if we have to get him back to civilization and get him medical help, that is going to be such a pain. That is going to be such a hassle. That is going to be such a problem for us that actually we prefer to just leave him for dead. So we're going to abandon him. Hugh never would have done that to his teammates, to the people he's working and traveling with, right? Hugh never would have done that to him. So he is furious that they did that to him. And he wants revenge. He wants to settle the score. He wants to get back at them, right? Here's an unrelated sentence. After losing the first game, the team was determined to settle the score in the rematch. Okay, so in the first game, this team loses. They lost in the first game, so they want a rematch. They want to play again because they want to settle the score. They want to get even. Yeah, their opponents beat them the first time. Now they want to get back at their opponents and prove that they can win as well. Here's the face of somebody who is determined to settle the score. Maybe they're mad. Maybe they're ticked off. Maybe they're more than mad. Maybe they are furious. We can say furious if you're really mad. Maybe they are livid. We can say livid if you are extremely mad. Maybe they are irate. We can say irate. Irate if you are seriously angry. So here's their face. They want to settle the score. They want to get even. Okay, moving on. Our next word is a verb. A verb is something you do, like run or jump or fish or sing or dance, right? This verb is expose. So if you expose something, what does that mean? If you expose something, you leave it unprotected. You leave it vulnerable. Vulnerable just means open to attack, open to being damaged, open to getting hurt. Okay, maybe some synonyms could be you uncover something, you reveal something. And antonyms or opposite words could be to protect something, to shield something, to take good care of something and make sure it is safe from harm, right? So in the story, we saw that Hugh was completely exposed to the elements. Sometimes you see this expression in English, exposed to the elements, after being left behind. So remember, his teammates abandon him. His teammates leave him behind, and as a result of that, he is left completely or entirely exposed to the elements. Okay, so maybe if you are staying in a log cabin, right? If you're staying in a house, or if you're camping, you are sleeping in a tent, right? You have some protection from the elements. The elements, that means like the wind, the rain, the cold, the snow, or maybe on the opposite end, the heat, right? So if you have protection from the elements, then the elements or extreme weather conditions are not going to hurt you. You are not going to be harmed by the elements. But poor Hugh, he was left unprotected. He was left vulnerable or open to being, harmed by the elements. So he was left exposed, right? Here's another unrelated example sentence. The painting was exposed to sunlight, which caused it to fade, okay? If something fades, then the colors are warped. The colors are changed in a bad way, right? And the colors of the painting, they get lighter and lighter and lighter because it was exposed to sunlight. Sun is beating down on the painting and the colors in the painting, causing it to become warped. I'm going to draw a picture of Hugh's face when he is exposed to the elements. Look, he is shivering, he is freezing. Here's his nose. We can see there's ice coming out of his nose. It's so freezing cold that there's icicles hanging from his face and his ears. He is really freezing cold. He has been left exposed to the elements, exposed to the harsh weather conditions. Now, here's a fantastic idiom for you guys. You guys know that I love idioms against all odds, okay? This means succeeding even when it seems impossible. So, some other ways of saying that could be getting something done despite difficulties, or accomplishing something and overcoming challenges to accomplish something, right? So maybe some opposite words would be an easy victory or certain success. So if you get something done against all odds, you accomplish something against all odds, then it seemed impossible. The chances of success were very slim, very low, but you still made it happen. You still did it, right? So in the story we saw, Hugh survived. He stayed alive against all odds and made it back to safety. He crawled his way through the wilderness and made it back to the safety of a town, of civilization. He made it out of the wilderness, out of the harsh weather conditions all around, right? Another example sentence unrelated to our story: against all odds. The underdog team won the championship. Okay, the underdog team. We're talking about sports right now, right? If a team is an underdog team, then the deck is stacked against them. In other words, it does not look like they're going to win. The odds are not in their favor, but against all odds, they win the championship. Okay, they win the big final game, and they achieve success despite having the deck stacked against them, despite the odds being against them. I'm going to draw a little picture down here. I'm going to draw a very determined mountain climber, and he is climbing. He makes it all the way to the top of the mountain, and he plants a flag at the peak, the very top of the mountain. And we can see that he is very, very high up. He is higher than the clouds here. And look, he doesn't have any climbing equipment with him, right? He came with the clothes on his back and nothing more. He only has his clothing and nothing else. So we can say that he summited the mountain. In other words, he reached the peak. He reached the top against all odds. Okay, we made it through the vocabulary breakdown, and we are coming back to the story now for a deep dive. Yeah, guys, this is the most useful part of my video. This is the real meat and potatoes of this lesson, the part that is the most substantial, the part that is going to help you the most. So get ready for the deep dive. If you haven't done so yet, this would be a great time to click like on this video. Leave me a comment letting me know how long you've been studying English, and we will dive right in. A grizzly nightmare. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about a grizzly bear in this story, a really big, really scary wild animal. Okay, so let's jump right in. Have you ever wondered what it takes, what is necessary, what is needed in order to survive in the wild, in the wilderness, in nature, right? When everything is against you, when the odds are not in your favor, or we could say when the deck is stacked against you, okay? This is the true story. This really happened of Hugh Glass, a man who refused, who would not quit. He refused to quit. He would not quit. He would not give up, even when the world seemed determined to take him down. So it seemed like the world wanted him to die. It seemed like the world wanted him to give up, like everything was against him, and the world was determined. The world really wanted to. Okay, really wanted to take him down. Yeah, if you are determined to do something, then you really want to do it. You are not going to give up easily. I am determined to be the best English teacher on YouTube. I am determined to make that happen. Is there something you are determined to do? Do you have a mission, a goal, a dream that you are not going to give up on so easily? You can let me know in the comments of this video. Say, I am determined to what? Hugh Glass was a frontiersman, one of the tough guys, one of those tough guys who explored the wilderness in the early 1800s. Yeah, at this time in the United States, people were going from east on this side, exploring towards the west, okay? And, this line of where people lived and what people knew about in the United States, it was getting pushed further and further to the west. But this line was the frontier, okay? The frontier. Beyond that line, if you went past that line, further than that line, that was the wilderness. That was a wild, wild world. So these guys who would go past that line, we called them frontiersmen. Frontiersmen, because they would go to the frontier, they would go beyond the frontier, they would go exploring. And these guys, as you can imagine, were really tough. What does it mean to be tough? That means you are not a sissy. You are not a sissy. If you get hurt, if something bad happens, you are not going to give up. You are not going to go running home to your mother. You are going to keep going. You're going to brush it off. Brush it off and keep going, keep fighting. These were really tough guys that you did not want to mess with, okay? So Hugh, he and his group of fur trappers were deep in what's now South Dakota. That's a state in the United States when disaster struck, okay? So a group of fur trappers, they are trapping animals. They are hunting wild animals in order to get their fur. We could also say pelts. They are getting the animals' pelts. They're going to sell these pelts and make a lot of money, right? So that's their job. That's how they make their money. And they are going about their business when suddenly there is disaster. Disaster strikes. In other words, something really bad happens suddenly. While they're out hunting, Hugh is brutally attacked by a grizzly bear. Okay, he's not just attacked. The bear doesn't just push him over or bite him one time. He is brutally attacked. The attack is brutal. It's really intense, really vicious, really vicious. This grizzly bear is out for blood. It really wants to kill him. So the bear didn't just maul him. That's another way of saying attacked by an animal. If an animal brutally attacks you, it claws you, it bites you, it mauls you, right? So it didn't just maul him, it left him with terrible injuries. So he is hurt terribly. He is hurt badly. He is deeply and terribly wounded. Wounded, right? Wounded. He's hurt badly. So most people would have given up. They would have just laid down and died, right? But not Hugh. Hugh was a tough guy, a really tough guy. So here's the real kicker. One of our vocabulary terms, right? Here's the part of the story that makes you say, wow. Here's the part of the story that makes you say, no way. Here's the part of the story that makes you say, OMG, oh my God. Here's the part where his team doesn't think he's going to survive and they decide to leave him behind. They decide to abandon him. But the worst part, the real kicker, the part that makes you say, what? Is that they didn't just leave him behind, they took his weapons and supplies too. The act of taking his weapons and supplies basically guaranteed that he was going to die. It basically ensured his death. It basically sealed his fate. Okay? Sealed his fate. That means basically he was guaranteed to die. He was 100% dead. It sealed his fate, okay? But Hugh wasn't about to let that be the end. What does that mean? He wasn't about to let that be the end. That just means that he wasn't going to give up. He was not going to let this stop him. He wasn't about to let this be the end. With sheer willpower, that means relying only on his willpower, only on his human spirit, his drive to keep going. He started dragging himself back to civilization, even though he was exposed, totally exposed, to the elements, but not just the elements, to predators too. A predator is an animal, or it could be a person who wants him dead, who wants to kill him. But despite that, he is using sheer willpower, the drive of his human spirit to drag himself all the way out of the wilderness back to civilization. He's dragging himself, right? So hand after hand, he is pulling himself along the ground. He can't even walk, but he's dragging himself back to civilization, or where people live, out of the wilderness, right? He has one goal, one mission. He wants revenge. He wants to get even. He wants to settle the score with the men who abandoned him, who left him for dead. That drive fueled his determination. So he's thinking about getting revenge. He's thinking about getting payback. He's thinking about settling the score. He's thinking about getting even. And this motivation, this mission, fuels him. It's kind of like gasoline in a car. It fills him up with fuel and pushes him forward, right? So he crawls through miles of wilderness. Guys, can you imagine that? Can you imagine not just crawling through miles of wilderness, but miles of freezing temperatures? And at the same time, you are starving. Yeah, you're facing starvation. There is no food available to you. And wild animals are circling in. They're getting closer and closer. The wild animals are thinking, you look pretty defenseless. You look pretty helpless. Maybe they could take you down, right? So the wild animals, they are honing in on you. They are zeroing in on you. They're getting closer and closer. But despite all of these challenges, nothing could stop him. Now, guys, here's the real kicker. Here's the crazy part. He did this for weeks. For weeks, he was crawling, dragging himself out of the wilderness, and he was in pure agony. Agony is like extreme pain, right? Terrible, terrible, insufferable pain. But he made it back miraculously, as if by a miracle. Miraculously, he returned to civilization. But instead of revenge, he actually chose to let go of his anger, and he spared the men's lives. So he found these guys, right? He found them. He tracked them down. He tracked them down, these guys who had abandoned him. But in the end, he took the high road. Yeah, he took the high road and he spared their lives. He said, you know what? I'm not going to kill you. You know what? I'm going to let you go. I'm going to allow you some grace that you wouldn't allow me. I'm going to treat you better than you treated me, right? So he lets them go. And that's a really amazing choice to make, right? Because certainly he was angry. Certainly he was furious. He was livid. He was irate. But he still chose to let it go, right? His story is a testament. In other words, it really speaks to It really speaks to the power of determination and surviving against all odds. Yeah, this is maybe one of the most incredible survival stories of all time. I really love this story. If you guys haven't seen the movie The Revenant, it's pretty good. I recommend it. Guys, what's the point of learning vocabulary and phrases and training your English if you can't talk about what you've learned? If you can't speak on the subject that you've studied, right? So now we're moving on to discussion questions and speaking practice. I have one question for you guys today. Is there anything that you have accomplished against all odds? So, in other words, the deck was stacked against you. In other words, chances of success were slim. Chances of succeeding were low, right? Very small chances of success. So, in other words, something you have done successfully, even though it seemed nearly impossible. I challenge you guys, push yourself to talk for 1 full minute. So I'm going to go first and give you guys a demonstration of what I'd like you to try and do. You know, in the story we read today, the story of Hugh Glass, we took a look at an incredible survival story. Yeah, a man's ability to survive against all odds. But I have a different example from my life. My personal connection is that I was able to meet my wife against all odds. Yeah, sometimes I think about that. You know, we're just two people out of billions on the planet, and I'm from America, she's from China. It sometimes seems like against all odds, we were able to find each other. Like the chances were so low, the chances were so slim that we would be in the same place at the right time and say the right words to each other and do the right things in order to end up together. I think that's something really special. It seems like our love took place against all odds. Okay, that's my personal connection, my personal example. Now it's your turn. Once again, I challenge you, really push yourself to talk for the full minute. Go ahead. As always, I want to give a huge thanks to my channel members, my Patreon members. Yeah, you know, guys, my videos will always be free for you here on YouTube. But if you want extra videos and if you want PDFs that you can use at home on paper or digitally to follow along with my lessons, to preview my lessons, to review my lessons, to make the learning experience that much more effective, then click join here on YouTube or go to patreon.com/English with Connor to become a member today. There are lots of perks. Like I said, you get PDFs, you get hours of bonus lessons, and importantly as well, you support me as your YouTube English teacher. My work would not be possible without my members, and it's only $5. So think about all the money that people spend on private lessons, on video courses, on apps. Don't do that, guys. Take $5, the price of a cup of coffee, become a member, and make that investment in yourself as an English speaker. If you are in the middle of a study session, keep going, keep learning. I will keep teaching if you will keep learning. I'm going to put another one of my videos up here on the screen. Click on it. Let's keep studying. Let's go. I'll meet you there.